Well, the maiden flight of low-cost airline FlySafair took to the skies today in Cape Town to Johannesburg. That was the trip. The low-budget airline was supposed to take to the skies last year, but rival airlines Comair and Skywise successfully applied for an interdict against the carrier in the North Gauteng High Court. They claimed FlySafair didn't meet the requirements of a 75% local ownership. FlySafair said it's now concluded its full broad-based black economic empowerment transaction, allowing it to reapply for its license. Well, aviation expert Lyndon Burns is in our Cape Town studio. He joins us now just to chat about the industry. Lyndon, good afternoon. So the model of FlySafair, basically, I would imagine, to get volumes and lots of people to try and make money. Is there a market for this model, and what's the viability?
There's certainly a market. Look, we used to have 5 carriers competing on the main domestic trunk routes, and then, of course, one time exited a couple of years ago. And that obviously benefited the other incumbents, SAA, British Airways, Comair, Kulula and Mango. So there's definitely a market there. And if we just look at the Cape Town-Johannesburg city pairing, it's ranked as one of the busiest in the world, with around about 4.5 million passengers a year just on that route alone, and around about 50 to 55 flights a day. So that's a lot of people moving on just that one trunk route.
All right,
and similarly, Joburg, Durban's not very far behind. But the difference between where we are today in 2014 and where we were when One Time was still in the market is that our GDP growth has slowed down a lot, and demand for air traffic or air transport really tracks GDP performance and reflects the economic health of the country. So we've got that as one factor, a slowing economy. We've got very high fuel prices. We're still, even though the price of oil has come down to below $80 a barrel today, on average we're still looking at around about $110, $120 a barrel for jet fuel in the industry as the spot price.
Let's talk about
then
that,
you've got
Lyndon,
the added.
I want to just stay with the oil price. I mean, like you rightly say, that's where it stands at the moment, $83 a barrel. There's nothing to suggest that we wouldn't see a price of $120 in a few months' time. What's the consequence of that for a carrier like FlySafair?
Well, not just for FlySafair, for any airline, at the moment, jet fuel accounts for about 35 to 40% of total operating cost. Compare that with 10 years ago when it was around about 12 to 15% of operating cost. And if you are an operator that's also flying cross-border flights, then you're probably paying a big premium on jet fuel, because it's one of the most expensive regions in the world is Africa north of the Limpopo. But we don't really have a hedge against the fuel price in South Africa, because we also pay for fuel in dollars, unless you're in South Africa. But even then, the imports are in dollars. And we know what the rand is. The rand's had a very weak performance against the dollar. And that's also a big hampering factor for airlines. It's not just fuel, but a lot of your capex costs are incurred in hard currency. But in South Africa, you're generating the bulk of your revenue in the softer rand.
It does bring us to the issue then of the use of modern and efficient aircraft if we were to mitigate against those factors, because you want to be competitive. That's not easy to come by, is it?
It's not. You obviously need the resources, you need the financial wherewithal, and to be honest, it's one of the concerns I have about FlySafair. This is a company that, Safair has been around for many, many years. They've been an aircraft operator on behalf of other companies doing charters, and they fly for things like the United Nations. And now they're getting into the airline industry using aircraft that they've had in their fleet for some time that were operated by other airlines like Velvet Sky, which weren't able to make a profit on them, partly because these aircraft are not the latest generation machines. So they don't have the economic performance that the very latest aircraft, which are being operated by SAA and by the Comair Group, have got. So they're on a back foot in that respect, and also those aircraft, are sitting around about 130 to 140 seats per aircraft, so they're limited in terms of where they can fly them, and unfortunately that means on those very already densely trafficked routes like Joburg, Cape Town, where there's a lot of very stiff competition. So it's going to be fascinating to see how much room FlySafair has in order to adjust fares to make themselves competitive and attractive, and at the same time cover their costs and return a profit on their capital.
I want to talk about FlySafair's fares now, because you have many people watching this and saying, well, what it's going to cost me? What is it going to cost me to make those simple trips around the country? 499 Rand between Cape Town and Johannesburg. Of course, this is not in peak season. So this fare secures a seat on a flight and allows for 2 or 3 pieces of free carry-on luggage that weigh no more than 7 kgs in total. Just very quickly, I see passengers also have a further option to select additional extras. Is there anything glaring in terms of a difference here, between this and other carriers?
I think one's got to be very cautious. Don't assume that, and in fact we've heard before over the last few weeks, Dave Andrews, the CEO of FlySafair, saying, look, we've got promotional fares, but they will be for a limited number of seats on each flight. And it's the same with all airlines. You'll see a loss leader type of fare being advertised, and you might only have that available for 5 or 10, maybe a handful more seats on each flight. The other seats are going to be sold at far more realistic fares, given the market. So I don't think you're going to see planes full of people flying at 499 Rand.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks very much indeed. Aviation expert Lyndon Burns talking to us from Cape Town. Now, Finance Minister